Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Well, it just rolls on, for better or worse, with more unfolding in this big drama show that we call the Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua fight negotiations. So in the past 24 hours since my last update on this rapidly evolving situation, we've had Team Wilder doubling down on its position that Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn need to accept the $50 million counteroffer that they've lodged before they will agree to meet and discuss the details of that offer. So this latest salvo, it's been a coordinated, multi-pronged response, and more on that in a moment. Also, there's been some talk of the consequence of agreeing to an offer that's been made from New York, be it verbally or in writing. So that's bubbled up, and some have suggested it automatically will tie Joshua into all sorts of arrangements. And I've got some strong views on this because there's a lot of misinformation, I believe, that's being tossed around on the subject. Some of it very deliberate in my view. But to the key news planks of the day first. So I'll start with Deontay Wilder, who's yet again taken to social media to voice his frustration at the fact Anthony Joshua has not accepted his yes or no deal for the $50 million guaranteed purse. Saying, since me and my team is not clear to some, maybe ESPN senior boxing writer at Dan Raphael ESPN can be of some assistance. We sent a deal over just like they did without a contract. The only difference is that we declined their offer. So no need for a meeting with a contract. At hypocrites at its finest. This is simple. It's like buying a house. You're not going to buy it without first accepting the price. Then contract follows accordingly. And here's a screenshot of the ESPN reference that Wilder has been referring to. So this is Dan Raphael explaining how he sees the situation when he was asked if the offer is legit and where the funding is coming from. So he says, I believe it is legit. What's different about it than Eddie's $12.5 million offer to Wilder other than it's more money? Where is Eddie's funding coming from? Heyman and Finkel have done massive fights. They know the business. If AJ accepts the offer at that point, you meet and they'll get a contract and proof of funding. Before that, you have to say, yes, I'm in. If it's a BS, there's no obligation and no signed contract, and you walk away. But AJ needs to say yes, and then go from there with the details. Okay, so Deontay Wilder's co-manager, Shelley Finkel, he's also waded into this as well, trying to keep the pressure up on Eddie Hearn by sending him another email. And this is not the first time that he's actually sent an email and then released it to the media. So as per BoxingScene.com, it reads, Good morning, Eddie. You know as well as us how a big fight is made. First an offer is made, and if the offer is accepted, a contract will follow. You saying we didn't even send you a contract is a smokescreen. Your recent actions will bear me out. 1. You made us an offer for Deontay Wilder to fight Anthony Joshua. This is for the same fight that we made an offer to Joshua. The only difference was that you made an offer to Deontay first. In your offer to Deontay, did you include a contract? No. Why? Because Deontay Wilder never accepted your offer. 2. You recently made us an offer for Deontay Wilder to fight another one of your fighters, Dillian Whyte. Did you include a contract? No, because Deontay did not accept your offer. 3. You made an offer to Vladimir Klitschko to fight Anthony Joshua. Did you send a contract? No. After some negotiations, Vladimir accepted a revised offer, and then is when you sent a contract to us. How can you complain that you have not received a contract from us when your own actions prove that it is not how a deal is done in boxing? If Anthony agrees to accept our offer, we will be glad to supply you with a contract, proof of funds, and any other relevant data needed to complete the contract. Thanks, Shelley. Okay, from both Wilder and Finkel, there's a little bit to unpack, and some of it good, some of it bad. And I'll start with the bad first. There is an old adage. When you're explaining, you're losing. And this is very true. There's too much explaining going on, too much clarification going on. And the fact it's come to this in such a public manner, trying to get the public to understand what's really going on, it tends to suggest there wasn't enough detail up front. It wasn't clear enough. And because of that, this has allowed Eddie Hearn to skirt around the edges of what's being said because there was enough room to do so. He's even managed to create a relatively effective narrative that the offer is not real because they refuse to meet. I mean, depending on where you sit in all this as a fan, that will impact where you currently side in all of this. Next, the third point about Klitschko. That's pretty interesting to me because Finkel talks about after some negotiation, Vladimir accepted a revised offer. Okay, so Finkel, he's ruled out any meeting to negotiate. So on that basis, negotiations were stalled to a point. But in the Vlad case, negotiations continued. They ended up making a deal. So if there's no negotiation at the moment, how can they help to make a deal? So in that respect, the Vladimir point, arguably, it does act to undermine Shelley Finkel's overall point to some degree. In terms of the good, their position, it's now completely clear. And importantly, Finkel and Wilder, they've managed to make the distinction between the agreeing to the purse offered and the signing of a contract, because they are two different things. And from what I've seen in my own comment section and elsewhere, this has often been confused at times in the last couple of days. In my own working life, as an example, I've negotiated a wage before a contract has come for me to sign. So verbally, I've agreed, okay, we'll talk about the money, and I've accepted, a figure after a negotiation. Then the contract is drawn up, and then I agree to the terms after reading through it. So I don't actually find what's being asked from Finkel, from Wilder, to be that unusual. And this is what Finkel and Wilder are now trying to stress. That what they are offering is well within the bounds of normal practice, that it's not actually that unusual as Eddie Hearn has tried to make people believe. I mean, it is over to you whether you agree with Finkel or not. But the fact that they now won't meet, Finkel won't meet Hearn in person until they have a yes or a no. It's a very hard stance, and one that Eddie Hearn just says he will not agree to, because he wants to see details before agreeing to anything. And in itself, that request is not unreasonable either. So I noted with interest as well, there's also been this verbal contract is binding in New York line that has been bubbling up. I mean, that's an old saying, a verbal contract binding in New York, because of a couple of cases over the years, 20, 30, 40 years ago. There's a number of examples. But it's been picked up by a number of YouTubers and elsewhere, and some of the narrative that is now being pushed on it is that apparently Team Wilder wants to trap Joshua into some sort of bad contract and pay him like £5 a week for the rest of his life. This sort of rhetoric. In my view, this talk, it's not helpful. It's anything but. And it really does make me despair for a few reasons. And just bear with me here. First, what is the actual offer that we've had on the table here, the counter offer? It's $50 million guaranteed, plus upside, if there is upside to be made. Okay, that is the offer. That's the sum total of what's being asked to be agreed to, right? So if it was accepted verbally or through email, then that is the obligation that is to be paid. So for some to automatically suggest and jump to the conclusion that it could end up being paid off in small installments over several years or decades, it's mischief making. Remember, the contract that would need to be signed for the fight after this purse is agreed, that would include the 1,000,001 things that a fight like this would entail. It would include all the relevant details. And there's no way that Eddie Hearn or Anthony Joshua would be signing a contract if it was doling something out at £5 a week or an installment over 10 years. They would negotiate the various provisions. And I'm sure that would include all these things like broadcasting rights, as has been suggested. And Finkel has said, look, they want to work with the broadcasters because at the end of the day, everyone stands to make money. They don't want to get in the way of themselves because in the end, they could lose money. And if they're looking to provide $50 million up front, you better believe that they want to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible and as much money can be generated from this fight. So while it might be true that a verbal contract is binding in New York, I don't think it's necessarily fair for people to say that Team Wilder is out to try screw Anthony Joshua over. People are just instantly jumping to that conclusion. Remember, these are two separate things. We have this purse offer, And then you have the contract that sits behind it with that figure in it and all the other details that respective sides would have to agree to. And I'm sure you can bet this your bottom dollar, Eddie Hearn has legal people out the wazoo. He'll have some sort of in-house counsel at Matchroom. They might even have a couple of people who draw up contracts and all sorts. But they will also have people that they go to, specialty law firms that handle this stuff. And they will be advising them right throughout the process. So even if they did accept verbally, you better believe they'd be doing it in the proper manner as to protect themselves from potential legal action in the future. They would be looking to mitigate any circumstances that could come back on them. That's business, and it just makes sense to do that. And they will be doing that. Okay, that's it from me. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.